So this is just a quick tutorial to show you the layers panel, well, an introduction to the layers panel, and also a little bit of hypershading. Now originally in the PDF this tutorial was all hypershade for texturing. I think we're going to use a node editor today, as the node editor is a newer way to complete these tasks. It's the same process, you can choose either window. There's just a little bit of difference in that the hypershade has the top panel which shows you all your nodes and textures by default. Alright, so I'm going to start by creating a polygon primitive sphere. And over in your channel box, just go into your input section and change the radius to 10. So we're going to make it quite big, and we'll make it really smooth. So let's go 64 by 64 subdivisions. So that's going to be the land of a planet. Now we're going to attach that land to a display layer so we can hide it by turning the visibility of the layer off. So go into your layers, which is under your channel box. It's in the same window. And this little icon here is create new layer. Double click on the layer name and let's call it land. And we'll give it a color, and this will mean when it's not selected, it'll show up in the viewport under a different color. So now we have a land layer ready to go. Select the object, go into your display layers, right click on the layer and go add selected objects. Now if you turn this little V switch on, you're actually turning on and off the visibility. You can also set the land to be a template or a reference. Have a look through the My Help files to get a better understanding of the difference between templates and references. Neither of them are selectable in the viewport. So you need to have that off to standard if you're actually editing. I don't know if you noticed, but when I have that land object not selected, the wireframe is now pink. That's because I changed the default display color in the layers. So I'm going to give this land object a name. Let's call it land geo for geometry. And we're going to texture this by creating a shader network. So let's do it in the node editor. So go window node editor and just use this little eraser to clear your graph, and then right click in the node editor and bring up the create node window. So what we want is to give the land a shader. Let's give it a blend. So don't worry about this shader group node at the moment, just worry about the actual node itself, which is the blend material. We're going to make it ocean world, so let's give it an ocean shader. This is not an ocean texture, so you're actually looking for, just type ocean in the, and what you want is this ocean shader. So we want that, and we also want to give it a bump map, so let's use a noise texture to do that. So let's go Brownian noise. So we're going to work in the node editor and also through the attribute editor. So just open the attribute editor. So we'll start by changing the color of this blend shader to the ocean shader. So middle mouse from the ocean to the blend, release, and choose color. Let's just turn on textures in the viewport and flat shade, and we'll change our renderer to high quality. We're also going to use a Brownian texture to create the bump for the ocean. So select your material again, middle mouse drag from the Brownian over into the attribute editor to bump. And now you'll have a bump map. So as you can see, the network's updated live, and now we've got a bump on our swatch on the blend material. So let's assign the blend to the object. So you can just middle mouse drag straight onto the object. And let's do a bit of a test render. Alright, I'll let you play away with the attributes of the Brownian shader so you can change the quality of the bump. So at the moment our network's messy and there's arrows and nodes all over the place. So let's just clear our graph, select the object and graph it again. So right click and go graph materials on viewport selection, and that just regraphs it, and Maya will tidy it up a bit for you. You might notice there's a time node attached to the ocean shader. Just allows you to animate the properties of the shader. So let's go ahead and create the cloud layer. So I'm just going to clear my graph, and I'm going to grab this object in the viewport and hit Control D to duplicate it, and hit R to scale. I'm just going to scale it up tiny little bit bigger than the land object. And now it's called land, so I'm just going to jump over to the channel box and change it to cloud geo. I'm going to give this its own layer as well. So I'm going to create a new layer here, call it cloud, and give it a color. Then I'm going to assign my cloud layer, my cloud geo, to that layer. So I'm going to add selected objects. And I'm going to give it its own independent shader. I'm just going to do it from the viewport here. I'm going to give it a Lambert shader. So I've just brought my channel box back up so I can see my layers. I'm going to just check that my layers are working. So I can turn off the visibility of the cloud and the visibility of the land. So I'm going to just turn the land off for the moment and keep the cloud on. So back into the node editor, I'm going to graph this materials. And I'm going to go and create a node to work with. So I'm going to use a cloud texture node. So this is my cloud here. And what I want to do with this is I want to map that into the transparency of the Lambert. So I'm just going to do a middle mouse drag and release, go down to transparency and make the connection. Let's just do a test render on that. So you can now edit your cloud to change the properties of the transparency of that layer. That's looking really grey as well, so I'm just going to go back to my Lambert shader there, go into my attribute editor and make the color white. Let's do another test render. The only thing is that cloud layer is way too heavy, so have a play with the settings of the cloud and you should be able to make more areas transparent. So I've just edited those cloud properties. This is a test render, that's close enough for our purposes. So let's switch the renderer over to mental ray, bring up the channel box, make the land layer visible and do another test render. At this point the clouds still don't look kind of bright enough, so I'm just going to go to the shader that's controlling the color of the clouds, and I'm going to bring the incandescence attribute just up a little bit and do a test render. Okay, that's too high. Bring it down a bit. I just want to kind of fake the properties of a glowing cloud layer. Okay, that's good for now. I'm going to put a volume shader in this as well. So we've got our shader networks all created. Now I'm going to create a little bit of fog to that cloud layer. So go to the create menu, go volume primitives, sphere, and scale it up to be just above the size of your cloud layer and your land layer. Open your channel box, let's create a new layer for it, and we'll call it cloud volume, and give it a color. So I'm just going to switch to my render view and see what it looks like. So it's only just big enough. Let's just scale it up a little bit more. And I actually think that's too big, but that's a good start. All right, so now we've got our objects all created, ready to go. I'm just going to drop that volume primitive that's creating the fog into its respective layer. So now I can turn layers off. Create one more layer here. I'm going to call it the lights layer. I'm going to give it a color. So I had a little play around with this scene and I played with a few different lighting types, and in the end I came down to the conclusion that the best look I could get out of this without spending hours and hours was just to create one directional light, which I put over here. And the directional light has arrows to tell you what direction the light's coming from. I've got its intensity at 2.51. It gave me a little bit more of a planet look, as if the sun would be coming from one direction and one direction only.